Hello, welcome back to Ruben Uncut. No real background today. Instead, what I'm doing today is being lazy, sitting on my couch while I do a reaction to Ben Shapiro's review of Superman. Considering previous reviews of Ben Shapiro's that I've reacted to, I am fairly confident that this will, at the bare minimum, be amusing, primarily for me. Let's get to it. Now, anyone who watches my show knows that I'm no fan of Ben Shapiro. I he's not the worst conservative alive, but he is annoying and he pushes a lot of talking points that have been long debunked, or specifically stuff like his opinions on school funding, which is all just propaganda from the Heritage Foundation, who are some of the worst Republicans alive.
Alrighty, folks. So I watched the new Superman, and I have many, many thoughts. This video is sponsored by our friends over at ExpressVPN.
For anyone who's interested, you can check out my review of Superman as well, which I'm betting I liked it more than him. That better than Knowles thing is interesting because that means that Knowles has also reviewed this movie, and now I'm curious how they differ, or if he just generally thinks that he has a better take than Knowles. I don't know. Maybe Knowles hated it too. I don't know.
You know, I went with my wife. My wife and I always have an interesting time watching movies together because when I go, I'm very analytical about what I think of the movie. My wife sort of gets an overall gestalt, and it's mostly like, that was fun. And so my wife's review was, that was fun. And I think most people who come away from the movie will probably do the that was fun thing. And that seems to be what the people are saying. People are generally liking the movie. They think it's fun. They think it's kind of a kick. David Corenswet is charming. He has good physical presence. I didn't mind him as Superman at all. Rachel Brosnahan.
What the heck? Who is doing his editing? Because, like, what the fuck was literally a piece of corn sweating? Okay, AI slop is in the middle of Ben Shapiro.
As Lois Lane was fine.
Actually, right at the top, not the middle.
Fine. I thought she was great. I thought both of them had good chemistry. I thought all of that was fine. And then there is the analysis. So, my overall review of Superman.
It's a quick reminder, Ben Shapiro was actually one of the few defenders of Batman v Superman. And this is actually one of the things that I'm curious to see, is because Batman v Superman and the new Superman movie actually, like, thematically and like in terms of storytelling, like subtextually, actually have more in common than they don't. It's mostly the top layer that is significantly different. So I am curious because I personally think that Ben Shapiro has very low media literacy. This is based on his review for Barbie and Dune, and the Dune movies. I have reactions to all of those, and he doesn't fucking understand those movies whatsoever. He does not understand the subtext of Dune. He has a whole bunch of weird things about Barbie that are just ridiculous.
Superman is super meh. It's meh. Okay, so all the people who are getting super exercised over the politics, and we'll get to the politics a little bit later on. I think that they are overestimating how much politics is in this. I think they're deliberately misinterpreting.
Actually, so I'm annoyed already because I actually kind of agree with Ben Shapiro's point here at the top. The movie is political. Don't get me wrong. There is interactions with the government. There's an overall thing going on with this other country invading another country, even though technically speaking, and this is a bit of a spoiler, but even that is technically really more of a machination of Lex Luthor. There are politics in the movie, but I do think that people have overblown the overall politics. Although, arguably, there's not no politics. And there are actually elements of the film that I would describe as woke. Let's see if Ben Shapiro picks up on those.
Some of the politics that are in there. This is not a movie about illegal immigration. It's not a movie about...
Yes and no. Yes and no. The immigrant narrative is overblown on Superman. The thing is that any Superman story is inherently an immigrant story because Superman is an immigrant. Superman immigrated illegally to the planet Earth and the United States as an infant. So technically that is built in there. while a lot of people, including James Gunn, have oversold the immigrant aspect, the reality is the immigrant aspect is inseparable from the Superman story. So it is in there. So to say that it's not in there at all would be disingenuous.
ICE, Russia, Ukraine, Israel.
So the thing about ICE, I actually kind of see that one in the movie, but I can understand why he wouldn't see it. Specifically, Planet Watch runs an extra dimensional correct like prison facility for metahumans, and it's highly debatable how legal or what type of processes they're even going in to grab these metahumans and put them in their extra dimensional prison. Like there is a clear, like you can see the ICE connection there. And it's all through this rich, powerful, elite person who is Lex Luthor, who is essentially running this extra dimensional prison or concentration camp for metahumans that includes even women and children, or just people he doesn't like, including people who just disagree with him politically or whatnot. If you can't see the metaphor for authoritarianism there, and the loose connotations towards ICE, and even, I'm not gonna lie, there were moments where where Lex Luthor in the movie is given a little bit Donald Trump. Absolutely. He's right now he's saying there's no Israel Palestine connection, and like I'm gonna give it straight up, I don't know if I can agree with that. So the thing is that the Baravian guy looks like an anti-Semitic drawing of Netanyahu with Bernie Sanders hair. It is never stated in the movie that they are Jewish. It is never stated in the movie, but he does look like an anti-Semitic stereotype. Like, I kind of feel bad for the actor, unless it's mostly makeup and hair. But like, you can kind of see it, and then he's clearly invading like a brown Middle Eastern country. So like the thing about that is that is it looks a little bit like Israel Palestine, but at the same time it also is never clearly stated. It's like, honestly, Black Adam feels more like it's about Israel Palestine than Superman does. It does look like there's some type of Israel Palestine thing going on the surface here. How deep it actually is, hard to say.
The Palestinians, there may be references there if you have politics on the brain, but other than that, I really don't.
I mean, like you, Ben? Ben, you have politics on the brain. I think Ben is actually just bad at subtext.
I don't think that there's that much of this there. That is not my overall problem with the movie. My overall problem with the movie is that you are taking the most iconic American IP of all time, Superman, which is,
it's got to bring in the American thing,
is to be treated with a certain level of respect. That doesn't mean it has to be, grand mythology the way that Zack Snyder wants to do. Like, my standard for Superman is not Man of Steel. My standard for Superman movies is 1978 Richard Donner, the best version.
What a bold, brave take of you. Only the most commonly held take. The first Richard Donner movie really is an elegant piece of cinema. Certain aspects of it have not aged well, but it is a very, like, you can, if it is more fun to watch as an adult, in my opinion. As a child, I thought the first Superman was boring, and I loved the second movie. But as an adult, I watched them and I'm like, oh man, this first movie is really good. And I watched the second movie and I'm like, somebody left this milk out in the sun.
Version of Superman. It just is. Overall, here is my problem. James Gunn is the wrong director, writer, creator for this thing.
I saw Chewbacca on the cover of People magazine. I was like, oh my God.
He's just wrong for it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy with...
I just want to point out that was a weird, like, I don't understand the purpose of that James Gunn cutaway. That was weird. It didn't like, what is, didn't make any
Superman
sense.
in it. And so that means it's all kind of a mess. It's an overstuffed movie in every way. It's visually overstuffed in terms.
Arguably, Man of Steel is a tighter film narrative-wise. That being said, I actually kind of disagree that this is Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it. I mean, there's clear, like, it's a James Gunn movie, but calling it Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it is a little bit unfair. Is it overstuffed? Yes, arguably. But like as a comic book reader, comic books are frequently overstuffed with these types of things. So I wasn't bothered personally.
In terms of plot, the plot holes are big enough to drive a truck through them. There are character problems. And all of it is just kind of wrapped around.
There are a couple minor plot holes in the movie. I'm going to give him that. Like, how come his cousin never mentions anything about his parents being like weird about like earthlings? How come that's never brought up? Like, how is that a conversation that's never happened between them? That's a valid plot hole.
This gauzy, fast-paced, jokey tone that doesn't mesh with Superman as central part of Americana.
Literally 3 of the Christopher Reeves movies are ridiculous cartoons with terrible jokes. Superman 2, the Richard Lester cut, is embarrassingly full of bad jokes. Superman 3 was meant to be a comedy, and they dialed up the weird camp situation. And then, like, Superman 4 is a combination of bad jokes, wacky cartoonishness, and just much lower budgets. Like, so to say that Superman does not go with this fast-paced, jokey tone, I don't think that's fair. For starters, Man of Steel is fast-paced. And those previous Christopher Reeves movies I just mentioned are pretty jokey. Like, arguably, the humor in those movies actually bothers me more than the humor in this movie.
To me, James Gunn's sensibility is always to be subversive. That is what he does. He does
That's true.
subversive in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? He takes a comic book movie and he turns it into sort of a potty-mouthed sitcom.
Don't drink fountain water, you idiot. That's disgusting.
That's an oversimplification, but kind of.
And he does the same thing with Suicide Squad. He takes that same sensibility, and now he's doing that with Superman.
The sensibility of Suicide Squad is actually the best part of Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad that he made. That movie, I have very mixed feelings about. There's a few things in there where James Gunn, like, in terms of his writing and, like, the way he chooses to use the comic book lore, I don't agree with. For starters, I think he largely wastes Starro. Like, there's a lot of potential in Starro that he just doesn't even touch. And, like, weirdly, it's the stuff you would expect Starro to do in the movies. Like, how come Starro doesn't possess a single member of the Suicide Squad? Like, there are enough suicides. Like, it would have been easy, too. Just, like, at the beach thing, have them actually, a couple of them actually be caught, and then get Starro-fied, and then have to fight the rest of them at the end. Like, that would have been like, it's the fact that that's not in the movie makes me like go, what the fuck is James Gunn doing? But like, overall, it's a solid film. But let's get back to this.
Superman robots, I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine.
I will say, calling them Superman robots feels lazy.
But he is unruly, and he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't, in our heart of hearts, care less whether he lives or dies.
And I get that after the interpretation of the Snyderverse is over serious, he's reversing himself into completely the opposite direction. But what that means...
But not really, because this is James Gunn's general tone. It's a mixing of comedy and pathos. Arguably, that might be the way the studio looks at it, but like, James Gunn's just doing James Gunn.
Means that he's constantly subverting everything.
I was raised with a dog that was my sister.
The very beginning of the movie, you are told that Superman is the most powerful metahuman, right? There's like a placard that says 30 years ago, the metahumans arrived. 3 years ago.
Did he just call it a placard? I've never heard someone call the text on screen a placard. Normally, I think of them as subtitles.
Superman emerged. 3 weeks ago, there was an invasion, and now 3 minutes ago, Superman's ass got kicked.
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
He's not very super. He is not the Man of Steel. He is not invulnerable. He gets his...
Like, the thing is, though, is that, like, he's literally being beaten up by a person who is, like, basically himself. Like, the only person in the movie who can kick his own ass is, and this is a spoiler, I'm sorry, Ultraman is his clone. like it's like it like I can understand how like when you don't have the context of the movie and like what's going on, you would think that yeah, this Superman's weak as hell, but like he's getting his ass kicked by a person who is his equal. It's not weird that he's getting his ass kicked, is the thing. And it doesn't actually suggest his real power level because normally your power level is referenced in comparison to other things, other people's power levels specifically. So, like, it's not. This is actually something that's been blown out of proportion because of the trailers, where you don't have the context of like who's kicking his ass and how strong that person actually is.
His ass kicked routinely. He gets locked up in a prison with
By the same guy. He gets locked up in the prison because he agrees to go to prison. He's brought into the prison by that same guy who kicks his ass. He is then kept in a room with literal kryptonite.
with a character who's making kryptonite out of his hands.
Sorry, what?
He's constantly.
That moment reveals the fact that Ben Shapiro doesn't know shit about Metamorpho. So there's that. That cutaway and his take here means that he's never even heard of Metamorpho. He doesn't know who that is. Metamorpho, the elemental man? You fucking fake nerd.
In victim mode. Like Green Lantern has much more success in this movie. Mr. Terrific has much more.
That's funny that he would say that Green Lantern has much more success. Did he not understand the sequence where the Justice Gang shows up to fight the kaiju, and even though they win, they do it like more recklessly and they don't preserve the life of the kaiju, which upsets Superman, but also the fact that they couldn't put him down more humanely upsets Superman. Like, Ben, how are you? Ben, what the fuck are you talking about?
More success in this movie than Superman. Superman's parents from Krypton.
Putting up a who for Mr. Terrific further exemplifies. Yes, I understand that these are relatively more deep cut characters because that's how James Gunn likes to operate for whatever reason. But like, come on, Ben, come on. That type of criticism doesn't actually speak to people who read comic books.
John, if you're going to go through the mythology, send him to Earth so that he can be a moral guide for people on Earth using his great powers to stop evil from happening to them. In this movie, his parents from Krypton send him there. This is the big revelation of the movie.
It makes sense that this would bother Ben Shapiro. It makes sense that Ben Shapiro would be bothered by this because the Messiah narrative for Superman works for him. And also, like the idea that he's sent from a higher power, that he's here to live as a moral example to the people of Earth, that speaks to him. Let me be clear, I'm not downplaying those as character aspects of Superman, even though those are character aspects of Superman that have routinely convinced both comic book writers and movie directors and movie producers and television makers that Superman is Jesus, regardless of the fact that he was created by two Jews from Cleveland.
His parents send him there to dominate the life on Earth as an alien invasion, essentially, and to create a harem of Earth women to have his many babies.
Well, sign me up.
So immediately you're taking the expectation of what you know
Jesus Christ, this editor.
about his Krypton parents and flipping it on its head. His parents, Ma and Pa Kent, in the original, they are noble and they are wise. They're kind of salt of the earth. Here, they're basically kind of, I don't know, like down home types who don't seem to, they live in a kind of a crappy house. They're the kind of people who call the TV the box. They're the kind of folks who are sitting around and you know, kind of scratching their butts. They're purposely cast as ugly and non-noble. It doesn't mean everything they say is bad. It isn't, but, and by the way, both of them are alive in this, right? The original Superman mythos is that Pa Kent dies, and that's what sends Superman.
Pa Kent's death is actually a lot more complicated than that. There are a number of different versions of both Pa Kent being alive, Pa Kent being dead, and like the various different ways that he lived or died. It's a little bit of an oversimplification to say that about Pa Kent's mythology. That being said, kind of agree with him on Ma and Pa Kent. Like Ma Kent feels dumb. But in fairness, the film doesn't really give her anything to do. Like, she just sort of like acts like an out of it boomer the whole thing. Pa Kent does get a real nice scene with Clark Kent where he can sort of shake off some of that dumb boomer vibe that has been heavily put onto Clark's parents in this movie. But Ma Kent never really gets that. It was hard. This one was hard for me because it's hard to not feel like this version of Ma Kent is a downgrade from Diane Keaton. Like, honestly, and regardless of how you think of the writing of Kevin Costner, like Kevin Costner he feels like a more inspiring father just by his mere presence than this guy. And I don't think the actors are really doing a bad job. I just think that there have been deliberate choices made about them. So I hate to say it, but I agree with Ben Shapiro on this. But I will also say I think Ben Shapiro is overselling it. First of all, so far he has not given credit to that scene that Pa Kent has, and it's a nice scene. It's a nice little scene. It kind of lets him shake off like some of the weird dumpy Midwestern vibe they have going on. To be fair, they are from the Midwest, but like it feels heavily stereotypical to me, and I didn't care for it. It was the one part of it was one of the parts of the movie that felt like a genuine downgrade in Superman mythos. But I do think so far Ben Shapiro's also overselling it a little bit. Like I didn't think that there was nothing redeemable about what was done with these characters. It sounds like he's making it sound slightly worse than it is, but I do mostly agree.
Man on his journey. Anyway, Crypto. The super dog is a terrible dog, is a dog that does not, like an idiot dog.
Technically this is a big change to Crypto as a character. This is James Gunn being subversive. I'm not necessarily saying it doesn't work though.
Like way worse than My Dog Happy. My Dog Happy way better than this dog, and My Dog makes
also like the reveal at the end also makes the dog's bad behavior make a lot of sense.
Trouble. This dog is a mess. Supergirl, who you get introduced to for a hot second at the very end, Supergirl is a drunken teenage brat. Right, like anything that you think you know.
Still a way less weird thing to do with her character than the actual Supergirl movie.
About the Superman universe, James Gunn is determined to debunk in the first half hour of the film. I think that it's a betrayal of the original IP and mildly upsetting. Not like hugely upsetting.
The thing about Supergirl is there have been like 3 or 4 different Supergirls. I'm not even fucking kidding with you. Like Supergirl, there is not a consistent Supergirl. Of course, you have Power Girl, who was originally Superman's cousin. And then they changed up her story. They changed up her origins in the 80s, and she became Atlantean instead. And then they brought back I don't know. She's a mess. And then we have this version, the Kara version. My understanding is based on the Tom King's Supergirl comic book. And then, of course, you have the Supergirl from the 90s, who is actually like a shapeshifter. And I think there was even another one after her, where the whole pitch was that it wasn't. The pitch for the comic was something like I never read it, but I remember seeing the ads for it, and it was something like they told her to get her life. They never said it had to be hers or something like that.
Upsetting, but mildly upsetting. That is my critique of James Gunn. He is not the right person for this film because James Gunn is not capable.
To be fair, there's going to be a certain number of Superman fans who are going to feel this way because he does take some big swings. He does make some big changes. There are some alterations to the lore. Some of his representation is not going to make everyone happy. But James Gunn also does a lot right where he's going to please a certain other portion of the fan base. It's just undeniable. And like the thing is that like it's like they say, you can't please everybody all of the time.
Of delving, he's not capable of delving into a single character and examining his motivations and what's interesting about that character. He can't.
That is not true. That is not true. The movie is largely about Superman's motivations. Could the film go deeper on Superman? Yes. If it wasn't so stuffed, it could probably go a little bit more deeper on it. Could the film go deeper on Lex Luthor if it wasn't so overstuffed? Yes. Is this Lex Luthor essentially the Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but like with a more comic book accurate look? I mean, basically, yes. But like, we only find that out because James Gunn gives gives Lex Luthor like a monologue at the end where he just like spells it out.
He can't do it with Superman. He can't do it with Lois. He can't do it with Lex.
Disagree on the Superman and Lois thing. There's a scene in the movie where like their characters are really well, like not in this direct way that he's asking for, but like in terms of how the film is actually showing their characters, not telling us about their characters.
Instead, he decides he's just going to toss everything into the stew. And so you end up with this sort of ADHD film where a bunch of things are going on at the same time.
I don't know if I hate or love his editor.
But you never get a good, interesting perspective on anybody who's in the film. So Green Lantern is...
That's not true. That's not true.
There, and he's kind of just a schmuck, and he's there to...
That's accurate. That's fucking Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner is a schmuck. That's probably why this version's in the movie, because he is a schmuck.
As comic relief. And then you have Mr. Terrific, who's the actual hero of the film, who you learn nothing about.
That's not true, though. Like, he does a lot, but like Superman also, like, it's not like Mr. Terrific's like origins are that exciting. Not to downplay his origins or anything, but like, you know what you need to know about his character from the movie.
Other than he's just kind of a noble do-gooder fellow. And you have all these superheroes who are wandering around. You never get any information about them that makes them interesting or sympathetic or even particularly cool.
Part of this is because of this style of writing that James Gunn is specifically going for here. He is attempting to make the movie feel like you are just picking up an issue of the comic book off the shelf. This is what it's like reading a comic book. Like, when you pick up a random issue of a comic book, you are typically, unless it's a self-contained story, which are rare these days, you are normally either jumping on right at the beginning of a new story, or you are jumping into the middle, the action already in progress. Some of the things that he's complaining about were done on purpose.
But you don't know the motivations of any of the villains, except for Lex, who it turns out is just really...
To be fair, though, with the plot setup, Lex is the only one whose motivations you really need to know, because everything's being orchestrated by him. Like, all the other villain characters are literally just working for him. Even the president of Baravia.
Kind of jealous of Superman because Superman has superpowers, and Lex is like, I'm really smart, and Superman is really strong, so why do people like Superman more than they like me? Which is a pretty boring motivation, to be frank.
But it's accurate. Like, what he just described is a little bit of an oversimplification. Because Lex Luthor, but in both Batman v Superman, a movie he claims to like, even though that's possible that he's just trying to be contrarian, and Superman 2025, Lex Luthor views essentially Superman and his powers as like this thing that lessens humanity, that makes humanity seem weak. And by extension, Lex Luthor himself. Even in this movie, it's pointed out that Lex Luthor hates metahumans, even though he employs metahumans. Think about that for a minute. But he hates Superman than the other metahumans because Superman is so powerful that all of the world looks to him for inspiration. They look to him for this thing, which is like the worst thing that can happen to an egomaniac like Lex Luthor. This is in the comics. This is in this movie. It's in Batman v Superman. This is a consistent thing for Lex Luthor.
The characters are complete pastiches. They're just cardboard cutouts. Even the moments that are supposed to hit don't hit because there's so much going on in the background because James Gunn cannot control his ADHD. He just cannot.
I think he was pooping his brains out for the next 36 hours.
There's a scene where Clark and Lois, they've had a fight and now they're back together and they're having a talk. And it's supposed to be this very intimate talk where they're speaking with each other.
I actually thought these moments worked really well.
And literally outside the window, Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl are fighting a gigantic sort of eye monster that looks like it's from Suicide Squad.
Stop it right there, Joker.
You'll never get me, Batman!
It's extremely distracting because he's James Gunn and everything has
Wait, are you just talking about the color scheme of the interdimensional imp?
to be some sort of dumb joke. You're like, well, shouldn't Superman be doing something about it? No, let them handle it. Again, that's irritating. As far as the plot itself,
that part actually didn't bother me. Like, because realistically, in the comic book universe, Superman is actively letting other superheroes handle problems all the time. Superman is not even the only superhero in Metropolis, okay? Just saying.
The plot itself makes very little sense. The plot is basically that Lex Luthor has decided that he is going to make a deal with a foreign politician who the left wants to believe is both Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, but actually is just kind of nothing, is going to invade another country. And Superman stops that invasion. Apparently, Lex wants to use this as an excuse to box up Superman, saying that he's running counter.
No. So the thing he's leaving out here is that war and its invasion was just something Lex Luthor, which to be fair, this does undermine the Palestine Israel theory that people might have about the movie. But it is stated verbatim in the dialogue. I'm not going to say it verbatim, but like the point is, it's stated literally in the dialogue by Lex Luthor that was an excuse to bring Superman into politics so that he could attack him, essentially.
Counter to American foreign policy. Now, we've seen that iteration in other movies, right? That was in Batman versus Superman. You've seen it in other versions of the Superman story, but it's not really taken kind of to its ultimate extreme politically. In any case, it turns out that what he really wants is to annex half of this separate country. He's going to split it with this other.
That foreign political exchange, also engineered by Lex Luthor.
Their dictator. One major plot hole. Lex Luthor is obviously the smartest person in the film. So smart, he can create his own universes. This is a major plot point. And he is concerned about a relatively small piece of land occupied by third worlders. This is his big plan. And later it turns out
he's not, though. Ben, he literally says he only did this as an excuse to kill Superman. He literally says it.
Turns out that he said, oh, no, I started that war just so that I could get people to turn against Superman. Okay, well, he does that halfway through the film. And then he jails him, and then he leaves him alive and explains this secondary plan that apparently was his primary plan, sort of. But he doesn't kill Superman at the time for a reason that remains undisclosed.
We hear that he killed 27 children, and you're always going to make mistakes, but that's how it is.
The entire plot is a complete mess. If you try to chart it, there's no way to do it because James Gunn doesn't care about plot. James Gunn doesn't care about character.
He doesn't kill Superman because his goal is because the government wants him to interrogate Superman first. Did you even pay attention to the movie?
Characters.
And it's implied that he is going to ultimately kill him at the end of the interrogation because the interrogation on Lex says he's just going to make up the answers. It's an excuse to torment Superman. He's being sadistic. Man, this is not hard.
Gunn cares about jokes and aesthetics. That's what James Gunn cares about.
Nobody cares anymore.
It's very difficult to make Clark a hero in a situation in which the plot is a complete mess. And again, that's not a rip on Nicholas Hoult, who I love in everything. I think he's great. Or David Corenswet or Rachel Brosnahan. That's a rip on James Gunn as a script writer. It's just not a good script. Okay, the visuals are, when I say a mess, I mean that the visuals are CGI vomit, like complete CGI vomit. So James Gunn has an addiction to kind of gross and weird imagery, which doesn't really fit in the context of the, again, Americana.
So, first of all, the CGI in this movie does not look that bad. It looks pretty good most of the time.
That is Superman. And so,
especially by today's standards,
there's some really gross and weird images, particularly in the Pocket universe, where you have characters who are turning themselves into weird tentacly octopuses, and you have people's eyes.
I'm sorry you think Metamorpho is gross. That's what he looks like.
Being attacked on a wide variety of it. He has an obsession with eyes, James Gunn. And you can see it in Suicide Squad. He has like an obsession with the eyeball being pierced. And it's very strange and off-putting. My wife was very off-put by a lot of this imagery. It feels like psychedelic LSD CGI vomit is what it feels like for large portions.
In other words, awesome.
Portions of the film. You never really get a kinetic scene of Superman doing something cool. You have multiple scenes of giant heavy
I don't agree with that statement.
The objects falling on Superman and Superman stopping the giant heavy objects from falling to save an individual. Again, another plot hole. You'll have a giant building. The entire building will fall, and he will stop the building from falling to save one person or a chipmunk who is in the way. But it's an entire building
I would have cut the chipmunk. I wouldn't have put that in there, James. That was dumb as fuck.
full of people. So presumably all those people are dead. In any case, the visuals.
The city has been unrealistically well evacuated, apparently. That is in the movie. Just to point that out, Ben, that you're not good at absorbing. You're either being dishonest or you're not good at absorbing things that are actually in the film.
I think are a problem. The music, again, I'm John Williams is still alive. Just hire
Superman doesn't do anything kinetically cool. Editor literally puts in the shot where he punches that guy's teeth out.
him to do your Superman movie, you stupid. Just stop it.
Get some help.
I get very exercised. This is the only thing that really exercises me about this. John Williams, his original Superman score is one of the great scores in all of movie history. It is a phenomenal score, beginning to end. It may be.
Fascists will always hold up certain things from the past that they can hold up as like these untouchable things because it's convenient for a number of reasons, including the fact that it's already widely accepted. Most people will agree with the take, even if the take itself is outdated.
John Williams' best score. I love that score so much. It is a great, great score. It is magic. And what do?
Not to downplay John Williams. Williams is a legend.
They take the original theme and they play a few notes from it because it's so iconic, and then they underscore it with nothing, with like a pedal tone. It sucks. The music is awful. The score is terrible. Just play the original score. The original score is
Except, Ben, that lacks real artistic merit to just reuse old movie scores. Like, that's literally just nostalgia baiting. If you're not going to put a take on it, then you're not doing anything creatively or artistically valuable. Like, you're literally describing being lazy artistically.
good. The original score is magic. You feel the magic when Superman flies in the original score. Like, what are you doing? Okay, then we get to the actual politics. So I know this is what people are waiting for. They're waiting for my political rip on this film. So we've been told this is a movie about illegal immigration. Not really.
Technically, no. We were told this was an immigrant story. Those are not, like, it's interesting that you can't see the difference between those things, Ben.
Honestly, like you have to look to find that. There's one line where Clark is saying, aren't you going to read me my rights? James Gunn's politics is so ham-handed, like truly ham-handed, that it doesn't even read as political, it just reads as stupid. So there's a moment where Clark, he's being arrested, and he says, aren't you going to read me my rights? And one of the members of the government says, well, you're now considered an enemy alien, or you don't have any rights because you're not an American. All right. If that's supposed to be some sort of...
For the record, that guy's Rick Flag Sr., you comic book Philistine.
like anti-ICE sentiment, it's really weak.
It is arguable that the entire dimensional prison is a slam on ice.
Also, legally incredibly stupid, considering that he came to Earth as a baby and then was adopted by an American family, which would make him American.
But illegally. There's no the paperwork is forged, Ben. That literally illegally.
That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation.
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
There's a suggestion that he says truth, justice, and the human way. I didn't catch that anywhere in the film.
I also don't remember him saying that, but that doesn't mean he didn't.
Sort of social media politics, that social media is stupid and rigged by bots, which, I mean, I think everybody sort of agrees on at this point. And there's a really dumb visual joke where Lex has set up actual monkeys typing into computers as his bots. It's like, oh, God.
But this is the real thing. Like, content farms and bot farms are real things.
But that's so James Gunn. Again, it's all so... I can't... I just don't like James Gunn. I mean, just to be... And again, I'm one of the people who, when James Gunn was...
In fairness, if you don't like James Gunn, this movie will not change your mind.
First fired from the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise in July 2018 over bad old tweets. I actually defended him at the time. So it's not about like anything personal with James Gunn. I just don't like his movies very much. The other politics of the situation are supposedly this foreign policy thing. So the left is suggesting that the foreign policy conflict in which Superman engages is a stand-in for Israel and the Palestinians, or alternatively for Russia and Ukraine. So let me give you the geopolitical setup. The geopolitical setup here is...
Honestly, I could see the Russia-Ukraine thing. Although it is worth noting that he is a guy invading a more Middle Eastern looking country.
There is a country called Moravia, and this country called Moravia is run by,
which in fairness sounds German, right?
Essentially a corrupt dictator who's working with Lex Luthor, and it invades another sovereign country, Jarhanpur. Okay, and so Superman stops that at the very beginning. Okay, and doesn't show him stopping it. He talks to Lois Lane about it. Fine. Okay, the idea is geopolitically that Moravia has been a longtime ally of the United States. Jarhanpur is a country where we don't know who it's allied with. And it may or may not be run by jihadis, but we don't know. We don't know who it's run by. It doesn't matter. The only reason that Clark stops it, that Superman stops it, is he says because
People were going to die.
Which, as we'll get to in sort of my final breakdown of why this movie doesn't work and why no really good Superman movie has been made since 78.
What did he say?
I'll explain in a moment. The people of Jarhanpur are brown.
Look at
You liked Batman v Superman.
my African American over here.
The people of Moravia are white. Okay, so this is why the left is reading this as Israel, the Palestinians. The reason it doesn't work that way is because we are not made aware that the people of Jarhanpur are either wildly terrorism supportive, that they have participated in multiple terrorist attacks on the people of Moravia. They are led by a corrupt dictatorship that murders gay people, right? None of that's in the movie. So it doesn't match up that way.
This is interesting. He's saying it's not, that can't be the metaphor because it doesn't line up with his own perspective on Israel-Palestine. Interesting. Of course, the thing is that if like James Gunn's coming from the left, it probably wouldn't line up with his interesting. I think I just figured out what's wrong with one of the things that's wrong with Ben Shapiro's thought process.
And the idea that Moravia is Israel in this iteration, like a longtime U.S. ally that's randomly invading countries for territorial gain, that does not match up to any of the facts on the ground that we know of at all. That is not real. So maybe in left-wing brain, that's how it reads. I could see if you're a left-winger and you don't know anything about the situation, or you think a bunch of false things, you could read that maybe. You could also...
I'm sorry, did he just imply that Israel, who constantly expands their borders, is not taking land from Palestine? Interesting.
Read this as Russia-Ukraine because it's one sovereign country that's invading another sovereign country, and because the leader of Moravia has a Russian accent. So I guess that if you have like...
Fair.
Poison left brain.
I hadn't really thought about his Russian accent, but he does have a Eurasian accent.
Russians are nuking us! Go! Go, go, go! We're all going to die! Come on, come on! The missiles are coming! They've lost their mind! Go! Get to the gym!
But you certainly don't have to read it that way. And I'm not going to read it that way because it's stupid and it doesn't make any sense politically. It makes no sense. Okay, so this brings me to my final point about this movie and all other Superman movies. The fundamental flaw in all Superman movies of my lifetime is the thing that Hollywood cannot say and will not do.
Politics, does he still stand for truth, justice, all that stuff?
The only Superman movie that I have ever seen that uses truth, justice, and the American way is the original 1978 Superman.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
This is not just a throwaway line. It is deeply important to the...
Of course. Of course. Here's the thing, though. Like, when Superman said the American way back in the day, it really did mean something different. Like, the creators of Superman had a very liberal, progressive view of America and what it stood for. Like, that democratic force in the world, people of all different cultures being able to live and work together. Like, but like just the words themselves, the American way, is like, oh, that's what's got to be in there to be Superman. If you don't have that, it's not Superman. Of course, Ben Shapiro would think that shit.
The character of Superman. Why? Well, because take Superman just as a character. Superman is unbelievably powerful, unstoppable. He's faster than anyone. He has X-ray and laser vision. He's stronger than anyone, right? He's basically a god on Earth, and the biggest god on Earth. He's Zeus, right? He can do whatever he wants. And so, why is he the good guy? Why isn't Lex Luthor right? Because, let's be real, if there were a person on Earth who actually had those powers, Americans would rightly be very much afraid of that. Correctly. As Federalist 51 suggests.
So, but like that is like the ethical fantasy of Superman, though, is the idea that he will choose to use power for good. Like that is the ethical fantasy. So, like the entire idea behind Superman's character is what kind of person would choose to use power for good. Like that's kind of the idea behind his character.
You need ambition to counteract ambition. If any one person had ultimate power, what you're really talking about is a philosopher king. And that's pretty scary because that person could be a dictator.
You are not using philosopher king correctly there, but let's continue.
Simply doing whatever they want to the world. The only reason why Superman would be a hero as opposed to a villain is because he grew up in America, because he has the American way, right? He's emblematic of what America.
There's a certain amount of truth to this. The idea of Superman has always been that he had these salt of the earth, hardworking, simple, gentle folk parents who raised him to always believe in doing the right thing. That is a big part of the Superman mythos. That's a part of all the movies. It's a part of the comic book. It's a big part of Superman's character and part of the question of what type of all-powerful person would still choose to use their powers for good. Because by and large, most superheroes up to Superman, most of them were on vengeance trips. Most of them were like, I'm going to get revenge, or I'm going to preemptively make sure that other people don't have to go through the thing that I went through. That's like a much larger percentage of superheroes are driven by that factor. Superman is a concept of like nurture and nature. His parents in most continuity are noble people. In fact, Jor-El is often viewed as like that outside force, that guy the scientist who sees global warming coming and warns everybody and nobody listens. His Kansas family, they're the salt of the earth ones. They're the ones who give him this moral upbringing. So Superman is this like combination of nurture and nature that is supposed to like show you who that person is. And Zack Snyder touches on a lot of this stuff in his movie. This movie touches on that stuff. The fact that he is from America has more to do with the fact that he was written by guys from America. I hate to tell you that, Ben. You're not 100% wrong here, but like literally speaking, if Superman had been created by two guys in England or two guys in Brazil or two guys in Russia, we wouldn't be looking at a story that is based around Kansas. We'd probably still be looking at a story based around farmers who are salt of the earth and moral people.
America may blunder, may make mistakes, but overall stands for freedom and liberty and private property and free speech and all of.
Throw that private property in there. Just so you know, things you own aren't private property, they're personal property. Private property is being utilized for profit. That's part of what makes it private property.
Of those things.
All that stuff.
Right? All the good American.
Also, technically, like, he's saying that not a movie since the Richard Donner movie has done the American way thing, but didn't they just, I'll catch in the edit, but didn't they show a clip of Perry White from Superman Returns saying the American way? Am I losing my mind? I'll catch you in the edit. I am losing my mind. I don't know if in the full edit he says the American way or not, but in that clip he does not say the American way.
Stuff. There's a great comic book called Superman Red Sun. It's an alternative universe in which
it makes sense that he would like Mark Miller.
Superman's capsule from Krypton lands in Soviet Russia, and he grows up as the emblem of Soviet Russia, and he's evil because he grew up in Soviet Russia.
He's not really, having read that book, I don't know if evil is really the right way to describe his character. He is ultimately good. His morals are just skewed different. He does do some bad shit in that, but like calling him evil is a very simplistic reading of that book.
Because if you give that amount of power to an evil ideology, then evil ensues. So
but it's but because it's Soviet communism, he has to say it's evil. Side note, Soviets weren't real communists, but that's
This is why it's really important. It's not just truth, justice, and the human way, or truth, justice, and all that good stuff. There's a specific definition of Americanism that says that this is why America, for example, should be a world power, because America is better than other countries. And people who live in accordance with Americanism make the world better if they have more power. That's why America is good.
No conservative will ever say, though, what that thing is that makes America better. Do you know what it is? It's progressivism. It's at the core, that belief in freedom and equality is based on egalitarian principles. And no conservative will ever admit that egalitarianism is what allows us as Americans to live our lives the way we choose, or as close to living our lives the way we choose as we can, without capitalism getting in the fucking way.
Because otherwise, Superman is bad, and Lex Luthor is right, and we should restrict his power. And we should jail him, and we should check and balance him, and we should not let him be free. The problem is,
there are actually lots of stories about how can Superman's powers be checked and balanced. And in fact, in the comic books, Superman himself believes that his powers should be checked, which is not something conservatives typically believe about America. Like, he gives Batman kryptonite specifically to check his power.
That Hollywood cannot say the American way because they don't believe in the American way. They don't believe that America is unique. They don't believe in these American basic values and principles and rights. They have a hard time even with the idea that, like, the values of Ma and Pa Kent back on the farm are values that ought to be promulgated in the best of all possible circumstances. And so what they come away with in kind of the key moment in this movie, for example, is Pa Kent telling Clark that parents don't make missions for their kids, right? They don't make their kids kind of what they are in terms of what they should be. They give kids the tools to choose what they want to be, and then those choices make those kids what they are. Okay, that's kind of half true and half not. Of course, you give your kids the tools to make choices in life, but you also try to define the mission your kid should have in life. That's maybe the most important thing you do as a parent. Direct them.
So, like, hypothetically, we could get into the language of what Ben Shapiro is saying, and maybe he doesn't mean it in the way that it sounds, but, like, ultimately, like, part of being an American is the idea that your child have the freedom to choose their future. That's like a key concept of being American. You want your kid to pursue something fulfilling to them. However, course, Ben is interpreting this in a purely moralistic terms. Pa Kent is talking about Superman choosing to be who. Well, it's also worth noting that the context is that Pa Kent is specifically saying that Superman's mission to do good is more, and the fact that he chooses to do good constantly is more important than the fact that his biological parents sent him to Earth to conquer it. Like, that's what Pa Kent is saying. Like, contextually, that's what he's saying. But fucking Ben Shapiro here is like putting it into more of like because ultimately conservatism is about conformity. And they can't admit that because half of their conformity is trying to get people to conform away from certain parts of society towards them. And they can't admit that because society has to allow for individualism for them to even be able to try and pull people over to their conformist side. So, of course, he's going to describe imparting morality to your children in this more conformist manner.
In a world of choices, what is the ultimate good? What is the ultimate goal? Hollywood is not run by people who believe that there is such a thing as an ultimate good or an ultimate goal. It's run by moral relativists who have a kind of, at best, soft...
It's run by capitalists, people who believe in money and they sell what is popular. If Hollywood executives thought that they could make more money by having Superman say the American way, they would do it. The reason they don't is probably because they care more about selling this movie tickets to this film in other countries besides America. And other countries will cite those types of statements as propaganda and could potentially either limit or not let the movie open there at all. That's why Hollywood does it, just so you know. Like, it's not because they're moral relativists. they are moral relativists because they're capitalists, and capitalism ultimately teaches us there is only one good, which is making money, and there's only one bad, which is not making money.
Peddled, generic, be nice attitude toward the world, which is why Superman's defense of intervening in this foreign conflict is
People were going to die.
okay, well, people would die on the other side, presumably, if you didn't intervene. Or people die every day in conflicts all over the world. Right? The reason that
in the movie, we literally see that John Poor has like a few machine guns, and most of their people are getting ready to fight with farm tools. Yeah, there'd be some deaths for Baravia, I guess.
Clark or Superman is supposed to intervene is because one side is right and one side is wrong. And unless you are willing to simply say that all foreign policy situations in which people die under any circumstances are equivalent, which I don't think is right, then you end up in...
The movie does bring up the fact that Superman doesn't believe in Baravia's claim on Jarhanpur. That is technically, Superman talks about it in the movie. Just going to point that out.
In this kind of weird generic place. The central question of Superman has never really been handled by any movie, and it's certainly not handled here, which is why should one person be given this much power? And the answer is he shouldn't, unless he is essentially just a metaphor for what makes America awesome.
But the thing about Superman, though, is that he didn't ask for the power. He was born this way. That's also a part of his character. Like, that's actually a relatively big part of his character.
Which is what Superman was designed to be. This is why...
In fact, it's actually part of why Lex Luthor hates him.
Superman in the original comics is punching Hitler. Because he is the American way and not the German way or the Soviet way or the Chinese way, which are different things. So, again, that is the fatal flaw, I think, for pretty much all Superman movies. But in this one specifically, they don't even bother with any of that.
But, the reality, though, is that subtextually, they're still Americans and they still represent American values. Just because they're not literally saying the American way does not actually change the content of Superman's character in the movies. He's still an American. He's still raised by salt of the earth Midwesterners. These other more recent movies, just because they don't use the expression does not automatically make Superman a globalist. He still largely operates inside the United States in all of these movies. But you know what? This takes not surprising from Ben because Ben can't do subtext.
It's cotton candy. You'll watch it. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Maybe you'll be like me and be overcritical.
Which is probably why he failed as a Hollywood writer.
You'll walk away. 2 days later, you won't be thinking about the movie. 2 hours later, you won't be thinking about the movie. Nothing about the movie is going to stick with you. The hero of the movie is the dog. Superman has to be saved multiple times by this, not particularly good dog. He's a good doggo, I suppose, but he really is badly behaved, this dog. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So my overall review, 2 out of 5 stars. Meh. I think that the stars do their best with bad material given to them by James Gunn.
The worms going in through the mouth and helping him as he's sobbing. And, he was it's kneeling at the end of the bed, and I was on the other side of the bed for that whole time.
Good job by David Corenswet. Good job by Rachel Brosnahan. Good job by Nicholas Hoult. Good job by Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. But, Superman, as I say, super meh.
The thing I want you to take away from that is how many times that he would essentially talk about the plot while not talking about the context of the moments that he was criticizing. And also, it's interesting that, he can't even seem to... he can't conceive of a subtext that doesn't align with his worldview. And that's very interesting. That's a very interesting thing about Ben Shapiro. His takes are hot garbage. Okay, I did agree actually with a couple of his criticisms, but overall, I think he's blowing a lot of shit out of proportion, and he genuinely doesn't seem to understand the actual plot function of a number of things in the film. Hilarious. I wonder if Ben Shapiro's ever been diagnosed, neurodivergently, because he is giving neurodivergent. Am I right, kids? Kids, you say giving, right? That's the young people talk. Sorry, I had to make it weird. But anyways, thank you for tuning in, especially to those of you who actually watched to this point in the video. I know that a lot of you just watch enough to get the general idea and then you tune out. But to those of you that do finish it, thank you very much, and I hope you're subscribed. If you're not, get subscribing. Whether you're on a podcast platform or you're watching it on YouTube, most likely while you're doing the dishes. Like, subscribe, comment. If you want to email the program, you can email me at rubenuncut@gmail.com. If you're Ben Shapiro and you're watching this, wow. I didn't expect you to. Thank you. Leave a comment. If you're Ben Shapiro, have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever you are.